Single father working Christmas Eve. The Apache woman who brought him fire changed everything. Snow fell softly over the small town as Christmas Eve slowly arrived. Streets were covered in white, and warm yellow lights glowed from windows. Families moved inside their homes, preparing meals, wrapping gifts, and sharing laughter. The sound of music floated through the air from shops and houses. For many people, it was the happiest night of the year. But for Daniel Harper, it felt like just another long shift. He drove slowly through the quiet streets in his old pickup truck, the heater making a low humming sound. His hands rested firmly on the steering wheel, rough from years of work. He watched people walking with bags and decorations, their faces bright with excitement. He felt happy for them, but also distant from that world. Daniel was a single father. 3 years earlier, his wife had passed away after a long illness, leaving him alone to raise their young daughter, Lily. Since then, his life had become a careful balance of work, responsibility, and quiet endurance. Every day started early and ended late. There was little time to rest, and even less time to think about himself. Earlier that evening, he had kissed Lily goodbye before leaving for work. She had been sitting at the kitchen table, drawing with colored pencils. Her small face had lit up when she saw him wearing his jacket. "Will you be home before Santa comes?" she asked. Daniel smiled gently, hiding the tiredness in his eyes. "I'll try my best," he said. He always tried his best, even when he wasn't sure it would be enough. Lily nodded, trusting him completely. That trust filled him with both warmth and pressure. He wanted to give her everything she deserved, but money was tight. The extra Christmas Eve shift meant more income, which meant he could buy her a small surprise in the morning. That thought kept him going. At the garage earlier that day, co-workers talked about their holiday plans. Some invited him to join their celebrations, but he politely declined. He didn't want to explain why crowded gatherings felt heavy now. He preferred quiet spaces where he could think without pretending to be cheerful. The delivery route that night took him across town and into the rural areas beyond. Most roads were empty, and the snow grew thicker as he drove farther from the center. The sky turned darker, clouds covering the stars. He completed delivery after delivery, checking addresses carefully, leaving packages at doors, and driving away before anyone noticed him. It felt like moving through another world, one where he helped others celebrate while staying outside the celebration himself. As the night grew colder, Daniel checked his list. Only one delivery remained. He sighed with relief. After this, he could finally go home to Lily. The last address lay outside town, near a stretch of hills and open land. The road there was narrow and rarely used, but it would save him time. He hesitated before turning onto it. Snow covered the surface unevenly, and tire tracks faded quickly behind him. The truck's engine made a strange noise. Daniel frowned and lowered the radio volume. He listened carefully. The sound stopped, and he continued driving, hoping it was nothing serious. Memories drifted into his mind as he drove holidays from years ago when his wife was still alive. She had loved decorating the house, filling every room with warmth and color. Lily had been too young to remember much from those times, but Daniel remembered every detail. He blinked quickly, pushing the memories aside. He focused on the road. Wind picked up, shaking the trees along the hills. Snow blew across the windshield, forcing him to slow down. The truck suddenly jerked, then lost power. Daniel's heart dropped. "No, not now," he murmured. He pressed the accelerator gently, but the engine sputtered. A warning light flashed on the dashboard. Within seconds, the truck rolled to a stop. Silence filled the night. Daniel tried turning the key again. The engine struggled but refused to start. He tried once more, nothing. He leaned back in his seat, closing his eyes for a moment, frustration mixed with exhaustion. He checked his phone, no signal. The cold began creeping into the truck. He knew he couldn't stay there long. Putting on his gloves, he stepped outside. The wind hit his face immediately, sharp and icy. Snow crunched beneath his boots as he walked around to open the hood. He stared at the engine, though he knew little about deep repairs. He checked a few obvious things, hoping for a simple solution. Everything looked normal. The loneliness of the empty road pressed against him. No cars passed. No lights appeared in the distance. Then he noticed something. Far away, between the trees, a faint glow flickered. At first he thought it was a reflection or his imagination. But when he looked again, the light remained small but steady. A fire. Daniel hesitated. The idea of walking toward strangers in the dark felt risky, but staying beside a broken truck in freezing weather was worse. He grabbed his coat tighter and began walking toward the glow. Each step felt slow against the snow. The wind carried faint sounds, maybe the crackling of wood burning. As he walked, his thoughts shifted from worry to curiosity. Who would be out here on Christmas Eve? The glow grew brighter as he approached. Trees surrounded a small clearing, their branches heavy with snow. Warm orange light danced across the ground. Daniel stopped at the edge of the clearing. A fire burned in the center, calm and steady, as if protected from the wind. Beside it sat a woman wrapped in a woven shawl. She looked peaceful, watching the flames without moving. For a moment, Daniel simply stood there, unsure whether to speak. Then the woman turned her head slowly, as if she had already known he was coming. Their eyes met. And in that quiet, snow-covered clearing, Daniel felt something shift, not fear, not surprise, but a strange sense of calm he hadn't felt in years. He stepped forward carefully, the warmth of the fire reaching him even before he came close. The cold that had settled into his bones began to fade. He didn't know yet that this meeting would change how he saw himself, his past, and the future waiting beyond this long winter night. But as the flames moved gently in the dark, he felt, for the first time in a long while, that maybe he wasn't as alone as he believed. Daniel stood at the edge of the clearing for a few seconds, unsure what to say. The fire burned bright and steady, yet the wind that had followed him through the trees seemed to stop at the edge of the circle. Snow fell softly beyond the light, but around the fire the air felt calm. The woman watched him without fear. Her dark hair rested over her shoulders, and the woven shawl around her looked thick and handmade. The patterns were detailed, shaped in careful lines that seemed to tell a story. Her eyes were steady, thoughtful. "You can come closer," she said softly. Her voice was calm, not surprised, not questioning. It was as if she had expected him. Daniel stepped forward slowly. The warmth touched his face, and he realized how cold he had become. He removed one glove and stretched his fingers toward the fire. The heat felt stronger than any fire he had stood near before. "My truck broke down," he explained, glancing back toward the dark trees. "Just down the road." The woman nodded once. "The cold tests machines," she said. "It tests people too." Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "I guess it does." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of wood cracking in the flames filled the space between them. The firelight reflected in the snow, creating a soft, golden glow. "My name is Daniel," he said finally. She looked at him carefully before answering. "Elena." The name felt simple and strong at the same time. He sat down across from her, keeping a respectful distance. The ground near the fire was dry, though snow covered everything else around them. That detail caught his attention, but he pushed the thought aside. "Are you camping out here?" he asked. "In a way," she replied. "My family gathers here every winter. This land remembers us. We remember it." Daniel looked around. The hills stood quiet, and tall trees formed a dark border against the sky. "It's Christmas Eve," he said gently, unsure why he mentioned it. "Yes," she answered, "a night of light." He studied her expression. There was no judgment in her eyes, only quiet understanding. "Most people are inside tonight," he said, "with family." "Fire brings people together," she replied, "even strangers." Her words settled into him. Daniel stared into the flames. For years he had kept his thoughts locked inside. Work filled his days. Responsibility filled his nights. There was little room left for feelings. But something about this clearing felt different, safe. "My daughter is waiting for me," he said after a long pause. "She's 7. Elena smiled softly. "She believes in tonight." "Yes," Daniel said, "she does." He hesitated, then added, "I work extra shifts during holidays. It helps with bills, but sometimes I wonder if I'm missing what matters." The fire crackled gently, sparks rising into the dark sky. Elena leaned forward slightly, adding a small piece of wood to the flames. The fire grew brighter. "Fire needs care," she said. "If you only gather wood and never sit by the warmth, you forget why you built it." Daniel frowned thoughtfully. He wasn't sure if she spoke about the fire in front of them or something else. "I just want to be enough for her," he admitted quietly. "Since her mother passed, it's just the two of us. Some days I feel strong, other days I don't." Elena looked directly at him. "Strength is not loud," she said. "It is steady." The wind outside the circle howled through the trees, yet inside the clearing the air stayed still. Daniel felt a heaviness in his chest loosen slightly. He had not spoken so openly in a long time. Even with friends at work, he kept conversations simple and light. Sometimes, he continued, I feel like I'm running all the time. Work, bills, fixing things at home, I don't stop. If I stop, I might feel how tired I am. Elena listened without interrupting. Tonight I almost didn't take this road, he added. Maybe that would have been smarter. Or maybe you needed this road, she said. Her answer surprised him. He studied her face more closely now. There was wisdom there, but also kindness. She did not look much older than him, yet she carried herself like someone who understood quiet things. Why are you out here alone? He asked gently. I am not alone, she replied, glancing toward the trees. The land is never empty. He followed her gaze, but saw only snow and branches. Winter reminds us, she continued, that light matters most when the night is longest. Daniel let those words sink in. He thought about Lily sitting at home, waiting for him. He thought about the way she still believed in magic, even after losing her mother. I used to build fires in our fireplace every Christmas, he said softly. After she passed, I stopped. It felt wrong somehow. Why? I don't know, he admitted. Maybe I didn't want to pretend everything was okay. Elena shook her head gently. Fire does not pretend, it simply burns, it gives warmth whether people feel happy or sad. The flames moved between them, steady and alive. Daniel stretched his hands closer. The heat felt almost protective. After a while, he realized he had lost track of time. The cold no longer bit at his skin. The fear of being stranded faded into the background. I should try my truck again, he said reluctantly. Elena nodded and stood up. Snow did not cling to her shawl as she moved. She stepped lightly, as if the ground knew her. Daniel followed her through the trees, back toward the road. The path seemed clearer now, though he was sure he had struggled through thicker snow earlier. When they reached the truck, it sat quietly under falling snow. Daniel opened the driver's door and looked back at her. Thank you, he said sincerely, for letting me sit by the fire. She gave him a small nod. Remember it, she said. He climbed into the seat and turned the key. The engine started immediately. Daniel froze. He tried again, turning it off and on. The truck ran smoothly as if nothing had happened. He stepped out quickly, looking around to thank her again. But the road was empty. The trees stood silent. Snow covered the ground evenly, untouched. No footprints. No sign of a clearing, no glow of fire, only darkness and falling snow. Daniel's heart beat faster, not from fear but from confusion. He walked a few steps toward where the clearing had been. There was nothing there, only thick trees and deep snow. He stood still for a long moment. Then he looked up at the sky. The clouds had shifted slightly, and a single star peeked through. He returned to the truck slowly, his mind full of questions he could not answer. As he drove back toward town, he felt different, lighter, calmer. The road no longer felt lonely, and though he did not understand what had happened in that snowy clearing, one thing was certain. The warmth he felt by that fire had followed him. Daniel drove the rest of the way home in silence. The truck engine ran smoothly, almost too smoothly, as if it had never failed. Snow still fell across the road, but the storm seemed softer now. His hands rested on the steering wheel, yet his mind was far away in that clearing. He kept replaying the moment in his head, the steady fire, the calm voice, the way the wind had stopped at the edge of the light. He tried to explain it logically. Maybe stress had made him imagine things. Maybe the cold had confused him, but the warmth he had felt was real. When he finally reached his house, the porch light was still on. A small plastic snowman leaned sideways near the steps, half covered in snow. He smiled faintly. Lily had insisted on placing it there earlier that week. He stepped inside quietly. The house was dim except for the Christmas tree in the corner of the living room. Its lights blinked softly in red, green, and gold. The sight of it filled the room with a quiet glow. On the couch, wrapped in a blanket, Lily was asleep. She had tried to wait up for him. Daniel closed the door gently behind him and removed his boots. He stood still for a moment, just watching her. Her small hand rested on the arm of the couch, holding a sheet of paper. He walked closer. It was a drawing. He carefully pulled it from her fingers so he would not wake her. The picture showed two figures standing near a large orange fire under a dark sky. One figure was tall, the other was small. Above them were stars. Next to the fire, Lily had drawn a woman wearing a long shawl. Daniel felt his heart skip. He stared at the drawing longer than he meant to. There was no way she could have known. He gently placed the paper on the table and knelt beside the couch. He brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. Her eyes slowly opened. "Daddy," she whispered sleepily. "I'm home," he said softly. She smiled and stretched. "Did you see her?" His chest tightened. "See who?" "The fire lady," Lily replied as if it were obvious. "She came in my dream," Daniel swallowed. "What did she say?" Lily sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "She said you were cold, but not from snow. She said you forgot something." He tried to keep his voice steady. "Forgot what?" "That you have fire, too." Daniel felt the same warmth from the clearing rise in his chest again. Lily yawned. "She said you just needed to remember." He didn't know what to say. Instead, he pulled Lily into a gentle hug. She rested her head against his chest without question, as if everything she said made perfect sense. "Let's get you to bed," he whispered. After tucking her in, Daniel remained sitting on the edge of her bed for a few minutes. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater. He looked at her peaceful face and felt something shift inside him. For years, he had focused on surviving, paying bills, fixing broken things, working extra hours. He believed that providing was the only way to protect Lily. But maybe he had been protecting her from everything except the one thing she needed most, his presence. The next morning, sunlight reflected brightly off fresh snow. Christmas Day had arrived. Lily ran into his room early, full of excitement. Daniel laughed for the first time in weeks as she jumped onto his bed. They opened small gifts together, nothing expensive, just simple items Daniel had carefully saved for. Lily acted as if each one were priceless. As she played with her new art set, Daniel noticed something. He didn't feel rushed. For the first time in a long time, he had nowhere else to be. Later that afternoon, Lily asked, "Can we make a fire today?" Daniel hesitated. He had avoided lighting the fireplace since his wife passed. It had once been her favorite part of Christmas, but he looked at Lily's hopeful face. "Okay," he said gently. They gathered small logs from the storage box outside. Daniel showed Lily how to stack them carefully. His hands moved slowly, almost unsure at first. But as he struck the match and watched the flame grow, he felt something steady return. The fire crackled softly in the living room fireplace. Lily sat close, watching the flames dance. "It feels happy," she said. Daniel smiled. He realized that the fire did not belong to the past. It did not belong to memories or sadness. It belonged to the present. As evening approached, Daniel stepped outside to check the mailbox. The air was crisp and clear. The storm had passed. When he opened the mailbox, he found something unexpected. Inside lay a small envelope with no stamp and no address. He frowned and opened it carefully. Inside was a simple woven bracelet made from natural fibers, shaped in patterns similar to the shawl he had seen the night before. His breath slowed. There was a small piece of paper folded beside it. 2 words were written in simple ink. "Keep warm." Daniel looked around the quiet street. No one stood nearby. No footprints marked the fresh snow leading to the mailbox. He stepped back inside slowly. Lily looked up from her drawing. "What is it?" He showed her the bracelet. She smiled immediately. "She found you." Daniel didn't ask how she knew who she was. That night after Lily fell asleep, Daniel sat alone in the living room. The fire had burned down to glowing embers. He held the bracelet in his hands. He could choose to dismiss everything as coincidence. But deep down, he knew something important had happened. The fire in the clearing had not just warmed his body. It had reminded him of something he had buried beneath grief and exhaustion. Hope. The next day, instead of signing up for extra shifts, Daniel made a different choice. He called his manager and adjusted his schedule. Fewer late nights, more evenings at home. It would mean tighter finances, more careful planning. But something inside him told him it was the right step. Over the following days, Daniel noticed small changes. He laughed more easily. He listened more carefully when Lily spoke. He began fixing small things around the house he had ignored for months, not because they were urgent, but because he finally had the energy to care. One evening, Lily brought him another drawing. This time it showed just 2 figures by a fire. The woman in the shawl was no longer in the picture. "Where is she?" Daniel asked gently. Lily shrugged. "She said you don't need her anymore." Daniel felt warmth spread through him again, not from the fireplace, but from somewhere deeper. He didn't know if he would ever see Alina again. He didn't know if he would ever fully understand what happened on that snowy road. But he did know one thing. He was no longer just surviving. He was beginning to live again after Christmas passed. Life slowly returned to its normal rhythm. The town removed decorations. Lights disappeared from rooftops. Snow on the sidewalks turned gray as days went by. For most people, the holiday feeling faded quickly, but for Daniel, something stayed. He wore the woven bracelet every day. At first, he kept it hidden under his jacket sleeve. It felt personal, almost private. When he looked at it, he remembered the warmth of the fire and the calm voice in the clearing. He did not tell anyone at work about that night. He knew how it would sound. Instead, he focused on small changes he could control. He reduced his overtime hours just as he had planned. It was not an easy decision. Money had always been his main worry. Every extra shift meant safety. Every hour at work felt like protection for Lily. But now he understood something new. Protection was not only about money, it was about presence. The first week of his new schedule felt strange. He came home before dark one evening. Lily looked surprised when he opened the door while the sky still held light. "You're early," she said happily. "I thought we could cook dinner together," he replied. Her eyes shone as if he had given her a large gift. They made simple food, nothing fancy. They laughed when flour spilled on the counter. Daniel realized he had forgotten how much joy could live in ordinary moments. Still, questions about that night remained in his mind. One afternoon, while Lily was at school, Daniel drove toward the hills again. Snow had melted in some places, leaving patches of wet earth visible. He parked near the road where his truck had stopped. The place looked smaller in daylight. He walked slowly into the trees, trying to remember the path he had taken. But the forest looked different now. No clearing appeared, no circle in the snow, no sign of burnt wood. He searched longer than he planned, but found nothing. As he turned back toward his truck, he noticed something he had missed before, a small wooden sign partially hidden behind brush. The letters were faded, but still readable. It marked land historically connected to Apache families in the region. Daniel stood quietly for a long moment. He had lived in this town for years and never noticed this sign. He returned home with more curiosity than answers. That evening, he searched online for local Apache history. He learned that small gatherings still took place during winter months, honoring traditions passed down through generations. A community center nearby sometimes hosted open cultural events for anyone willing to attend respectfully. Daniel hesitated for several days before deciding to go. He did not want to intrude. He did not want to offend anyone, but he also felt pulled by something he could not ignore. The event took place on a quiet Saturday afternoon. The building was simple but welcoming. Handmade decorations hung along the walls. The scent of food filled the air. Daniel felt nervous as he stepped inside. Several people stood in small groups, talking and smiling. An older man with kind eyes noticed Daniel near the entrance and approached him. "Welcome," the man said warmly. Daniel introduced himself and explained that he had come to learn more about the history of the land near the hills. The elder nodded thoughtfully. "Many stories live in those hills," he said. Daniel hesitated before speaking again. "I met someone there on Christmas Eve," he added carefully. "A woman by a fire." The elder listened closely but did not look surprised. "Sometimes," the elder said slowly, "the land shows people what they are ready to see." Daniel felt a small chill, though not from cold. "I don't know what happened," Daniel admitted, "but it changed something in me." The elder studied him for a moment, then smiled gently. "Then that is what matters." Daniel did not press for more explanation. He understood that some things were not meant to be fully explained. Over the next few weeks, Daniel returned to the center several times. He listened more than he spoke. He learned about traditions of balance, respect for nature, and the meaning of fire in winter ceremonies. Fire was not just heat. It was renewal. It was guidance. It was memory and future at once. The idea stayed with him. At home, he continued building small routines with Lily. They started lighting the fireplace once a week, even when the weather was not very cold. It became their quiet time. Sometimes they sat and talked. Other times they simply watched the flames. One evening Lily asked, "Do you think she watches the fire too?" Daniel smiled softly. "Maybe," he said. "Do you miss her?" Lily asked. He thought carefully before answering. "I'm thankful for her," he said. "But I think she wanted us to keep our own fire." Lily nodded as if she understood more than her age suggested. At work, Daniel felt different too. He no longer rushed through every task with tension in his shoulders. He focused on one job at a time. He spoke more kindly even when days felt busy. One coworker noticed. "You seem lighter," the man said one afternoon. Daniel shrugged with a small smile. "Just trying something new." "What's that?" "Being here," Daniel answered. It was a simple sentence, but it carried meaning. Weeks turned into months. Winter slowly gave way to early spring. Snow melted from the hills, revealing green beneath. Daniel returned to the road near the clearing one more time. He parked and stepped out, breathing in the fresh air. This time he did not search for signs. Instead, he simply stood there quietly. He closed his eyes and remembered the fire. He realized something important. That night had not been about magic or mystery. It had been about reminder. He had been close to going cold inside, not from weather, but from exhaustion and silent grief. The fire had shown him what he still carried: strength that did not shout, warmth that did not depend on perfect conditions, hope that did not disappear when life became hard. As he opened his eyes, sunlight touched the hills. The place felt peaceful. He no longer needed to look for the clearing. It existed inside him now. When he returned home that evening, Lily was drawing again at the kitchen table. She looked up and smiled. "Daddy," she said, "you look happy." Daniel walked over and kissed the top of her head. "I think I am," he replied. A full year passed more quickly than Daniel expected. Seasons changed slowly, almost quietly, yet when he looked back, everything felt different from the man he had been the previous Christmas Eve. The town moved through spring and summer into autumn again, and with each passing month Daniel noticed small but meaningful changes in his life. His routine had become more balanced. He still worked hard, but he no longer filled every free moment with extra shifts. Instead, he learned how to plan better, saving carefully and spending time where it mattered most. Even when money felt tight, he reminded himself that being present with Lily was not a luxury, it was necessary. Lily had grown taller over the year. Her laughter came easily, and her drawings filled the refrigerator door. Many of them still showed fires, warm colors, and peaceful landscapes. Sometimes Daniel wondered how deeply that night had shaped her too, even though she had only experienced it through dreams. The woven bracelet remained on his wrist. It had faded slightly with time, but the patterns were still strong. People occasionally asked about it. He simply said it was a reminder. Autumn arrived with cool winds and golden leaves. One evening, while raking leaves together in the yard, Lily asked, "Will we go back to the hills this Christmas?" Daniel paused, leaning on the rake. He looked toward the distant horizon where the hills rested beyond town. "Yes," he said finally, "if you want to." She nodded eagerly. "I think the fire will be happy to see us." Her words made him smile. As winter approached again, decorations returned to the town. Shops displayed lights and ornaments. Music drifted through the streets just as it had the year before. But this time, Daniel did not feel like an outsider looking in. He decorated the house with Lily laughing when they struggled to untangle old strings of lights. He even invited a neighbor to share hot chocolate one evening, something he would not have done in the past. Work still brought challenges, but he handled them differently now. Instead of carrying stress home, he learned to leave worries at the door. It wasn't always easy, but he tried. The days moved closer to Christmas Eve. That morning, Daniel woke before sunrise. Snow had begun falling again during the night, covering the ground in soft white. He stood at the window for a long time, watching the quiet world outside. He thought about the man he had been 1 year earlier, tired, lost, moving forward without truly feeling alive. He remembered the broken truck, the cold wind, and the unexpected warmth of the fire. He didn't know whether he would ever see Elena again. Part of him believed that the meeting had happened exactly when it needed to, no more, no less. Lily ran into the room, excited and full of energy. "Is it time to go?" she asked. Daniel laughed softly. "Almost." They packed a small bag together, extra gloves, blankets, a thermos of hot chocolate, and small pieces of firewood. Daniel had learned proper safety and respect for building outdoor fires, ensuring they followed guidelines and left no harm behind. The drive to the hills felt peaceful. Snowflakes drifted gently across the windshield, and soft music played quietly on the radio. Lily looked out the window, searching for familiar landmarks. When they reached the road where Daniel's truck had once stopped, he parked slowly. The place looked calm and unchanged, yet it held deep meaning for him now. They stepped out into the snow together. Cold air touched their faces, but it felt welcoming rather than harsh. Daniel carried the bag while Lily walked ahead carefully, her boots leaving small tracks behind her. They found a safe clearing not far from the road. Daniel paused, looking around. It wasn't exactly the same place, or maybe it was, and he simply no longer searched for signs. He knelt and began building a small fire. Lily watched closely, remembering each step from the times they practiced at home. Soon, flames rose gently, warm and steady. They sat together, wrapped in blankets, watching the fire move against the snowy landscape. "It's beautiful," Lily whispered. Daniel nodded. The silence felt comfortable, not empty. As they drank hot chocolate, Daniel reflected on everything that had changed. His life was still simple. Challenges still existed. But he no longer felt alone in the world. He had learned to ask for help when needed, to listen more deeply, and to appreciate small moments instead of waiting for perfect ones. The fire crackled softly, sending sparks upward. Lily suddenly pointed toward the trees. "Did you see that?" Daniel looked quickly but saw only snow-covered branches moving gently in the wind. "What did you see?" he asked. "I thought I saw someone," she said quietly. "Maybe it was just the snow." Daniel smiled gently. "Maybe." He did not feel the need to search or chase the moment. Whether someone watched from afar or not did not matter. The warmth of the fire was already with them. They sat there for a long time, sharing stories and memories. Daniel told Lily about her mother, funny moments, favorite songs, small details that kept her presence alive in their lives without sadness. As evening approached, the sky turned deep blue. Stars began appearing one by one. Daniel felt a quiet gratitude fill his heart. He understood now that the fire he had met a year ago had never been meant to stay outside him. It had simply helped him remember what was already inside: resilience, love, and the ability to begin again. Before leaving, he carefully ensured the fire was safely extinguished, leaving the place clean and respectful. As they walked back to the truck, Lily slipped her hand into his. "Daddy," she said softly, "you don't feel cold anymore." He looked down at her, surprised by the truth in her words. "No," he said with a gentle smile, "I don't." They drove home under a sky full of stars. Christmas lights from the town appeared in the distance, welcoming them back. Daniel glanced once more toward the hills through the rearview mirror. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a faint glow between the trees, warm and steady. He didn't stop to check. Instead, he continued driving forward, carrying the warmth with him. Because the fire that had changed everything was no longer something he needed to find.